Hello and welcome to pjnet.tv and this video segment, My Perspective and Comment. And I want to start right out again, as I have been for the last month now, and when this whole Wuhan flu virus reared its ugly head here, emanating from China. And we started, when we saw this taking place in China, we talked about if it came here to the States, would we be prepared for some of the things that China was initially doing, like quarantining and all the precautions that were being taken in that nation. Now, what has taken place from then till now? And we see it hitting here in the U.S. A lot of things this week has taken place with college games, NCAA, NBA, NHL, a Major League and Minor League Baseball. Almost every sport where people are gathering, they are canceling. Right now, what's happening in our schools, in our colleges? Canceling, go on home. No more classes. You're not coming to our universities. Just go home and you will do online learning. And what they're talking about is these students may not come back until the fall. So a lot has been taking place over this past week. Right here in New York, we had a week or so ago, the governor anointed himself with new powers. He assembled the Senate to Albany, New York, the capital, and in the dead of night, and basically the Emperor of New York now has these state of emergency powers, and it looks like he's using them. Are they all bad? Are some of the decisions that he's making all bad? Well, we'll discuss that. In fact, we'll discuss it right now. One of the things that the governor has done is in the downstate area, there was a case in an individual in a synagogue that came down, was very sick because he had a pre-existing condition, and was hospitalized. He had the Wuhan virus, flu virus. And what the governor did is he swooped in and said, okay, we're quarantining the group in that synagogue that came in contact with that individual and that individual's family, and then another family that that were directly in contact with him. So it's in Westchester County. Basically, what the governor did is the epicenter of that infection. He basically has wheeled in the National Guard for cleaning facilities and to isolate the individuals in that 1 mile radius. The governor has also, as I had mentioned, closing schools. He has also declared that no more than, if you go to an event and it's more than 500 people, time out, you can't do it. It has to be 500 or less. If you go to a restaurant and that restaurant holds say 500 people, or let's to make it easier, 300 people, 150 is the maximum that can go into that restaurant. So what is the governor saying? Only half occupancy. Why is he doing that? Social distancing is what's taking place here. He doesn't want people on top of one another because he wants to avoid the possibility of this quickly spreading flu virus. So that's just a few. Now, what the governor has done here in New York has been, well, we've seen it. We've seen it in our sports, NCAA, the college sports sending, and many of the colleges throughout the nation are sending their students home to study from online. So this is what's taking place. We talked about this to you a month ago, just to be prepared. And again, if your area gets hit, I would say that it would be prudent to have a game plan and have provisions that would be able to take you through 2, 3, 4 weeks of a quarantine situation. So, I look at this, and a lot of people can say, "What? This is crazy. What's taking place?" And I have been, with all these cancellations right now, I'm looking and saying, why are they doing that? If it was me stepping back, I use the analogy of a wildfire. And what in a wildfire, especially if you've got high winds, it's a rapid burning, and it just scorches everything and burns down everything in its path. Now, what happens if that takes place? Well, one, you get a quick moving fire, destroys everything, and then it's done. So no more burning because there's nothing left to burn. Okay, in this situation with this Wuhan flu virus, it's fast moving, very contagious, and if you're in a certain health condition, if you have pre-existing conditions like especially respiratory, and you're elderly, over at this point they're saying if you're over 70 with a physical pre-existing medical conditions, you are very vulnerable to severe illness and death, and that's serious. This particular flu virus is nasty, and it will, especially if you're in a nursing home right now, and and that's what they're focusing. The nursing homes, I believe in Seattle this past week, that was a hot spot, and many perished in a certain nursing home in Washington. And that was the other thing that the governor here in New York has said, that no one is, except medical personnel and a certain case, like if you have a loved one in a nursing home that is on death's door and could any day now perish, there are existing conditions that would disqualify that being barred from access. And in fact, we just heard. I was listening to a local talk show, and a gentleman called up and said, "My son 2 weeks ago." Was hit, or 3 weeks ago, was hit by a car. He's in a nursing home right now, and they're telling him that he could perish any time now. And he went to go see his son, to be with his son, and they said, "No, you can't come in. The governor has just said no access." Well, after, you could hear in his voice very upset, and a few calls were made, and I guess went right up to the governor, and they took another look. The nursing home didn't really read fully what what that whole the conditions for barring individuals, and a loved one being there with their family member was not one of them. In fact, the only condition that was set for a loved one having access was that he was masked and gowned when he went into the facility. So that particular concern of that loved one was alleviated, and he was able to be with his son. But it's things like this that, everything's new. These edicts are coming out, and people sometimes don't know exactly what all these commands mean and how they should move forward in these conditions. But I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, look, why don't we just let people live their life? Those that don't fall into that category, basically that they'll get a cold. They may not even show symptoms, and let this burn through. Now, why? And I'm that would be me, but I see the rationale. One, the president and his administration and the professionals, the medical professionals, have taken a look at ground zero. And what took place at ground zero? There was a situation where this Wuhan virus outbreak took place, and the medical, there was people were coming in sick, and it was a crisis. So what did they do? China, over a weekend, built these big, massive housing facilities just to house the sick, because the hospitals were overrun. They were failing. So what did we learn? The decision from our professionals, from our healthcare professionals, is we can't break our medical system. And folks, that's what they're trying to avoid right now, is total breakdown of our medical system. So what are they doing? Instead of letting the wildfire burn through, they're pushing the brakes on. And what are they doing? Quarantining, screening, and removing anyone that they find that has come in contact or coming from these areas of infection. They're doing a quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks for monitoring to make sure that they don't have it. Why are they doing this? Because they don't want to break our medical system. And so I can see the rationale, and a game plan, a plan of action is better than no plan. We have, at this point, it's working. Our medical system is taking care of our sick. And the other thing I want to point out is that's, the medical system breaking. We're not just talking about the Wuhan flu virus. We're talking about surgeries. We're talking about other cancers. People coming in that want to go get treatment for certain ailments. We're talking about those individuals that have other diseases and other treatments that they need to go to the hospital to get treated would be affected. Now, in fact, here in New York, the governor has already said that they are looking at right now, if you have a surgery scheduled and it's not a critical life-threatening surgery, something that can be that can be delayed, he's asking that some of those surgeries might be delayed, so there isn't extra taxing on on our medical system. So a lot of things that are taking place that we would look back and say, wow, is this an overreaction? And I think at this point, we still have unknowns. We don't have a inoculation at this point. They are making sure that they don't want to break our medical system. So, again, if it was me, I would say if you're healthy, you're under 70, and you're in good physical condition, just live your life and go about your daily daily routine. Now, go about your daily routine, but let's not be stupid. Let's not be licking the doorknobs. Let's wash our hands. And as I've said before, maybe a little bit more often. And at this point, if you're going in public, you're going to be about in public, then you might want to have a small jar of the hand sanitizer, and you might want to wash your hands more often when you're in public. Those would be areas that even to the point of being almost obsessive, to make sure that you're not bringing this virus along for the ride with you. And again, if you have a cough or a sneeze, then you want to block it with the elbow. Keep your fingers out of your eyes and nose and mouth, because that would be a direct transmitting of that disease. So as we've talked about, the preparation and keeping that in mind, and we've already seen the stores in a lot of areas, especially in New York City, they had a run on the stores. Toilet paper, they just, people stampeded in, and all these supplies are depleted when, planning and overreaction. And I believe that, the president has this past week addressed the nation. Myself, the administration has a handle on what's going on here. He's got Mike Pence, the vice president, that's overseeing, spearheading this effort. And there seems to be an awareness of the seriousness, and they have plans in place. Now, what has been fighting the president, and it's despicable. Is the media, and some that are playing politics with this, but primarily the media. Anything that our president is trying to do in this crisis time, nothing can be done right. One, he's too late. This or that should have been done a lot earlier. This is a brand new flu virus, and the president didn't know that this was going to hit the world as it has. And we have our medical professionals that are on top of this, and even our medical professionals that would be coming up with the inoculations and the testing necessary to make sure that a remedy is safe. There was a ramp up period. That only makes sense. But if you listen to these lapdogs, the political arm of the Democrats, you'd hear a whole different story. That's why I recommend, if you are a viewer of these left-wing media outlets like CNN and MSNBC, and really the whole the mainstream media, turn off the TV and live your life, and not be propagandized with the crisis that's all around us. If we listen to our medical professionals, this is something that's going to burn through. This is an area where there is a small, narrow individuals in our population that would be drastically and severely affected, and we know that. And we know that self-quarantine does work. We've found out that masks can be effective, and especially for our medical professionals. We all don't need to have masks. Just the proper hygiene is very important, that we maintain that. And so let our medical professionals deal with this. Let's not overtax our hospitals by going in. They've already said, if you're feeling sick, don't run to the emergency room. Call your doctor, or call the hospital and say, this is my symptoms, what should I do? But don't go running to the hospital, because you don't need, if you do have the Wuhan flu virus, you don't want to be traipsing that into that facility. So, we will just be vigilant and be methodical about, if you're in public, to maintain those cleanliness and sanitary preparations and procedures. Now, let's talk about talking politics. Let's talk about what's taking place here. We have Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Tulsi Gabbard. You don't hear anything about her because she's not, it's amazing that she she hasn't withdrawn, but she's not on the radar. It's Bernie and Joe Biden. And, there's a lot of concern right now. Joe has some momentum, but there are things coming out now, interviews, some of the constituents, potential voters for Joe Biden are getting a mouth lashed by Uncle Joe. And there are some concern that it's not only that he's lost his fastball, but there may be some issues with age and him really being up to the task. But who do they have left? The communist slash socialist, or Joe Biden, and we see that the calculation from the Democrat Party bosses is, we'll go for Uncle Joe, and we'll surround him with with the necessary people. And I guess my thing right now is I heard Clyburn, congressman for South Carolina, who was pivotal to get Uncle Joe's momentum in South Carolina, where he won dramatically, which set the stage for Super Tuesday and the momentum that he has now. But Clyburn has said that he'd like to see, and he's already putting forth here, Stacey Abrams as potential VP. And I look at the field, and the Democrats, they're all about identity politics, and if you're not the right color or the right gender, then you're disqualified. So the other individual of color would be Kamala Harris. So I look at Kamala Harris. The Democrats that were out voting didn't embrace what she was selling, and so there's that. Why not? I don't have a dog in this fight. So, but here's a suggestion: who on that stage at least had some experience, could articulate a message and what they would do. And for me, the only person that came anywhere near close, far, again, looking at it from my vantage point, far left, but at least could run the nation, at least has written bills along party, across party lines, and could get things moved when it comes to legislation and bringing forth laws in this nation, and that was Amy Klobuchar. She's a senator. She's worked with people like Warren, Cruz, on both sides. She's worked on both sides. Bernie, and so if Biden wanted to stick with someone that was still considered from the Democrats' viewpoint a centrist, Amy Klobuchar would be that candidate. Will he go that route? No. The Democrats are all about the identity politics, and they're probably going to go down that road, regardless of that. And what really emphasizes this fact is, if Joe is failing, you need someone that can pick up the reins and be able to carry on the nation with the so-called centrist vision for the country. And when I say like in quotes, centrist. She's not a centrist. Joe is not a centrist. But when it comes from a Democrat viewpoint, they are. So there's that, folks. We'll keep our eye. Oh, and the other area is, are they going to, now they have the excuse. And Rahm Emanuel's saying, and Rahm Emanuel was the chief of staff for Clinton back in I believe, the year 2009, 2010. He was chief of staff, and he was the mayor of Chicago the last mayoral term. But Rahm Emanuel has stated, and it was made famous in his political history, was, you never let a crisis go to waste. And what he was saying is look, you'll be able to make laws and bring forth things that never would have been thought of, and be having the ability to be able to get those passed until you had that crisis and people were saying, well, we'll do anything. Okay, write the law, change this, that, or the other, because of this crisis. And we are seeing some things right now. The governor of New York has already started to do some things, anointing himself with these powers that never would have happened if we didn't have this crisis. So we have this situation that is putting everything topsy-turvy. But we have to take a step back, and when we're looking at what's going, what has been taking place. Look, we're Americans. Let's not forget that. We're not Chinese. We're not Japanese. We're not Russians. We're not a third world country. We're Americans, and we're going to get through this, and we're already making steps right now to put in place containment, and we're working right now in getting some inoculations to be able to help the vulnerable be able to fight this. So let's take a step back. Let's listen to our medical professionals. Keep our ears to what's happening as what our president is doing. Keep our president in prayer. Keep our nation in prayer. I mean, people right now are seeing their 401ks and investments really taking a hit right now in this time frame. But let's remember what took place a month and a half ago. We have an economy that's strong. And, the analogy I would use is it's like somebody trying to hold a rocket ship down, and they are successful right now because of this virus and everything that's surrounding the loss of business and the quarantine situation. But once we get through this, it's going to be, that rocket ship is going to blast off, and it's going to blast off, this economy will rocket ship up. And I want to also, just realize now, Wuhan was the center. China was the center. China right now is getting people back to work. So if you want to get a kind of a time frame, 2.5 months of a severe situation, and now China is seeing is at the other end. Europe right now is in the middle of this, and that's why President has made the move to for 30 days to ban countries, targeted countries coming in, banning having them their residents or anyone coming into the country from Europe. And I support our president in that effort. But look, we're seeing some positives right now that China, that epicenter of this flu virus, is now on the other end, and they are getting people, their workers, back into the manufacturing areas. So we see that there is some light at the tunnel. And I want to, at this point, take a look at a scripture here. 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And what's been taking place is you almost look around and say, has everyone lost their mind? But remember, God is with us. He doesn't want us to be, struggling with fear. But He has given us that that we don't have that spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. So keep our eyes on Him. Keep our eyes on the Lord as we go through this time frame. Keep our president and all those that are in leadership positions that are making these decisions to combat this very severe flu strain, and keep them lifted up in prayer. We're going to get through this. We are moving through this right now, and there are forces on the ground here in our nation that are doing things to help keep our citizens here in the country safe. Keep them in prayer. And that's my perspective and comment.